Shooting from the shore is no good when all the fun is happening in the water. Let's take a look at 3 different underwater camera housings and go over some tips on how to capture good photos and video with each one. Hey guys, Mia here. I've paired up 3 cameras and 3 underwater housing options. They all worked flawlessly to seal the water out, so let's take a look at the pros and cons of each. Here's what we're shooting with. A Sony CyberShot RX100 in Ike-Light's compact digital underwater housing, a Nikon 1J2 in a Nikon WP-N1 underwater housing, and a Nikon D7100 with an 18 to 105mm f3.5 to 5.6 lens in an EWA-Marine underwater bag designed to accommodate virtually any DSLR camera. Let's start with the Ike-Light housing and the Sony RX100. I really like the 1080 60p video this 20 megapixel point and shoot camera captures out of the water. The autofocus is quick and you'll find access to full manual controls in video mode. Underwater conditions can be tricky, especially when it comes to getting the right exposure, so manual controls are a must in my opinion. The Ike-Light housing designed for this camera is made from durable, corrosion-resistant polycarbonate, which is clear to enable you to fully monitor the camera and the O-ring seal. It feels rugged and heavy in your hands and features a depth rating of 200 feet. The housing provides access to all camera functions via mechanical controls. You can control the aperture ring, zoom, mode dial, and back control ring with large texturized knobs. These are easy to grip and use underwater, and so is the shutter lever. The only knob I had a bit of a problem with was the zoom control. You have to make sure that it's centered around the zoom lever before you close the housing, and if you push it just a little too far, the camera will be stuck all the way zoomed in, and you'll have to take it out of the case to fix it. The small silver buttons on the back were a bit more challenging to work with for me. It took some trial and error punching before I got the hang of which button controlled what. Now, if you're really familiar with the RX100, then you probably won't have the same problem, but the buttons are packed so tightly together that I had a tough time hitting just one button. We were shooting in a strong current, so the included wrist strap gave me some security. The Ike-Light case is the heaviest of the 3 at 2.5 pounds, but underwater it didn't feel heavy. Humidity was a problem with this housing. Working in 90-degree heat, the lens fogged up on us a few times, and after about 15 minutes, we got the overheating warning on the camera. Unfortunately, it never really cooled off until we were back in the AC, so that limited our time working with it. The clear housing allows you to use the built-in pop-up flash for stills, and it also comes bundled with a flash diffuser to soften the light of the flash and a flash deflector to redirect it towards an external strobe. The housing's built-in lens port is threaded for 67mm lenses and filters, so you have the option to attach a wide angle or a macro lens. Wide angles increase angle of coverage, so you can get closer to your subject while fitting more in the frame. Macros give you the ability to capture extreme close-ups with clarity. In either case, getting closer minimizes the distortion caused by the water, resulting in improved image quality. And you can attach a color correction filter to restore hues that get absorbed underwater. Ike-Light makes several color correcting filters and an optional wide-angle lens that will work. If you want to bring along strobes for still capture or LED lights, which work best for video, check out the optional tray and handles for this housing. Optional external strobes, such as the AF35 auto flash, must be triggered as slave units by the camera's built-in flash, since there's no external strobe connector on the housing. We were shooting in clear water and bright sunlight. Those conditions made it hard to see the LCD screens through any of these underwater housings, but of the 2 hard cases that I used, this one was the best. In the shade, I could see most of the video, and underwater I was at least able to make out faint outlines of an image. Now with the Nikon WP-N1 housing, which is the other hard case, judging the exposure was the most difficult task. The back cover is tinted, which you think would help the situation, but I found it much too dark to make out anything. So here's a tip that helped me a little. First, I made sure to go into the J2's setup menu and turn the monitor brightness all the way up. Next, I stuck the camera in the housing underwater and grabbed a few seconds of video, then went into the playback menu and called up the histogram by hitting the display button twice. The histogram helped me get a read on the exposure and make some adjustments. But humidity slowed us down again by fogging up the lens. It was definitely an issue with the hard cases, but there are a few ways to help avoid this. First, don't let the housing sit in the hot sun. If you don't have a bag to put it in, throw a wet towel over it. And if your case has enough room for a few desiccants, those can help too. Just make sure when you put them in that they're in a place where they don't obstruct your view or the controls. I absolutely love the way the controls are set up on this case. The big buttons are labeled and spaced out well, and the shutter lever is textured and easy to use underwater. With these controls, you can access key camera functions, including shutter, zoom ring, mode dial, multi-selector, movie recording, playback, delete, and the menu. The WP-N1 housing's lens is made specifically to work with the 10 to 30 millimeter zoom lens on the J1 or J2. And with a knob on the side of the case, together with an included zoom gear sleeve, you can control the zoom underwater. The housing features a depth rating of 131 feet. It weighs just 1.7 pounds and feels solid and very durable. The DSLR style hand grip makes it easy to hold with one hand if you need to use the other to swim. If you plan to work with a flash or strobe, then you'll be happy to see the cold shoe for a lighting arm up top and 2 fiber optic cable ports for strobe connection. I did not get to test this connection, but the strobe should be triggered by the camera's built-in flash. Outside of this, the built-in flash is useless because the front of the N1 housing is opaque. The front lens is also threaded for underwater color correction filters. Here's the thing, this housing is actually more expensive than the camera and lens itself. Nikon also makes a WP-N2 housing to go with the newer J3 or S1 camera, and it's almost identical to the N1 housing, but it's also more expensive than the camera and kit lens. However, you may find that having the underwater footage is worth it. Let's move on to the least expensive option of the three, the EWA-Marine UA underwater housing. Now, I must admit that I was a little anxious putting the most expensive camera I was working with, the D7100, into the least expensive housing. But after a few heart-pounding minutes in the water, my fears were gone. This housing allowed us to capture really beautiful underwater footage. We were careful to seal it correctly using the corrosion-resistant clamping rails, and not a drop leaked in. The housing is waterproof down to about 60 feet, and the EWA-Marine case is the only one that didn't give us any trouble with humidity. The flexible laminated PVC case also proved to be the easiest to see through underwater. I could frame up shots and check my footage on the LCD. Although the viewing circle on the back is a bit oddly placed, oftentimes the seam of that circle was running right through the center of the LCD screen. Adjusting the camera settings did take a little extra time. There are no dedicated buttons because this is not a camera-specific case. Top controls, like the shutter and movie buttons, are accessed with a finger insert. Underwater, I found it difficult to make sure my finger was in the right spot, and it's just easier to pull the whole bag up out of the water and make the adjustments. Air often gets trapped inside with the camera, which made the EWA-Marine housing more buoyant than the others. To avoid this, all you have to do is just squeeze the air out of the bag before you seal it. You'll find lens adapters for 52, 55, 58, and 62 millimeter filter threads inside the bag. The bottom line for me is that all of these waterproof cases worked when it came to keeping the cameras dry. You just have to decide which one might be right for you based on the conditions you'll be shooting in and what your specific gear needs are. No matter what, you'll definitely come back from your next water adventure with a little different perspective. I'm Mia McCormick. Thanks for watching.
Whether you're a hobbyist or a professional, B&H has the answers to your questions. Experience a world of technology at our New York City Superstore. Connect with us online or give us a call. Our staff of experts is happy to help.
Scott Kelby here, and welcome to this quick tour of our online training. We have hundreds of online classes for you, covering everything from lighting to landscape photography. From portrait photography to sports, we have classes on wedding, automotive photography, shooting, food, fashion, travel, you name it. The most incredible part of this is the price. You get all of this for just $199 a year, or you can pay monthly for just $24.95. 24-hour a day, 7-day a week access from anywhere in the world. I invite you to join with us today and start learning right now.